Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Being with Bella podcast. My name is Isabella. I am the host of this podcast, and today I have my friend Audrey with me here.
Hey!
So, I think we wanted to start off. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, or should we get right into the convo? You don't have to. I can also cut this part out. It's up to you.
Yeah, well, we're both seniors in college.
Mm-hmm.
About to graduate Lewis and Clark College. We met in both, we were studying abroad in Sevilla in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
We met in photography class with a very eccentric professor.
Yeah, he was a fun dude.
And had a great time, and now we're here.
So, I think we wanted to start off and talk about what it means to find the one, or like if that's like a real thing. I think that's something that we wanted to explore a little bit.
I honestly don't think the one exists. We have the capacity to love many people.
Yeah.
Well, not like many, but multiple people over the course of our lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, sometimes you're more or less compatible with someone, and sometimes it feels more or less intense, but I don't think that there is such thing in the one. But I also don't believe in like fate or anything. So that might.
Yeah, I do believe in fate to some extent, but I don't know necessarily if I think that there's one specific person that is like the person for you, because I feel like that does put a lot of pressure on like that has to be them, and it has to be them, and it almost just puts too much of a dependence on that person.
100%. I feel like I've made that mistake before where in a relationship I put too much of myself in this other person.
Yeah.
And the result of that was I ignored a lot of these negative signs.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, the most important thing is how someone treats you.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter how much you like them.
Yeah.
It matters how well they treat you, because that's what's, if you are gonna, marry a person or whatever, like, that's, the thing that's gonna stick for the rest of your life. Because your emotions and your feelings will sort of like change and evolve over time, but as long as like you have a healthy relationship where you both treat each other well and you communicate openly, that's the dream, I guess. That's what you want.
Yeah. I think the tricky part where that comes in is if I am open to like meeting a guy, the first thing that I focus on is not how do they treat me, it's like, do we have a connection, like, beyond, like, the physical? Like, do we have, like, an intellectual or, like, emotional connection? Like, that's usually the main thing that I think about and, like, look for. Because I guess in my mind, you can, like, set expectations for how you want to be treated, and as long as you don't tolerate the treatment that you don't desire, then it's, like, not enabling it. I guess for me, I'd rather be, like, alone than with someone who treats me well, but I, like, don't have a connection with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that approach is, like, okay, as long as you're not tolerating that bad treatment, of course.
Right, yeah.
But I feel like I have a totally different vibe when, I don't know, going, like, I think, or at least just, like, what I'm attracted to is, like, just a really good person who I see that they're treating others very well, and they sort of move through life in a specific way.
Yeah.
And I feel like that sort of, like, connection and chemistry can be built with, obviously, sometimes it doesn't happen, and that's okay, right? Then you move on. Like,
oh no, my AirPods died.
No.
How can we fix that?
We had some technical difficulties, but we're back. I was talking about, chemistry. Like, I feel like chemistry doesn't always have to come on the first or second date, or I don't even know. I think I've just always been a pretty awkward and anxious person, so I'm not as good at having that immediate connection with someone, and how I first meet someone probably isn't always a representation of how I'll be once I get to know them.
Yeah.
And I honestly feel like the chemistry comes in a little bit later.
Yeah.
And for like the first or second date, I think I am mostly looking for compatibility, similar values, how they treat people, how they treat me. And so at least in my experience, that's been what's worked the best.
Yeah.
Just finding like a really good person, because they're hard to find.
They are.
And then, seeing if you're compatible, if you have the same values and beliefs. And I'm not saying you need to have, the exact same beliefs, but I like certainly, certain things I do need to be similar. And I, at least for me, like, I think you were, talking about intellectual, definitely someone who can have those intellectual conversations.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's what you're going to be left with in 50 years of a relationship with someone. Like, just someone you enjoy talking with and experiencing life with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I struggle with patience when it comes to dating.
What does that mean?
As in, like, part of dating is, like, figuring out if you like the other person or not. Learning about them and learning about if they're a good fit for you. And so, for me, if I find someone that I, like, instantly click with, that is, like, the most exciting thing in the world because, like, that's really rare to find. I don't know. I've never enjoyed, like, the waiting game, even though I know that's technically more sustainable and, like, logically that's like the healthier way to approach connections. I've always just had this belief if I don't like click and vibe with this person, like if I'm not comfortable around them, then like that's not something that's gonna like grow.
Yeah, to be fair though, I do, even though I have like a certain approach, I do tend to take relationships pretty quick at the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't know, I don't feel like it's a waiting game because I do end up like getting really close really quickly.
I see.
But the initial like first date is always so awkward.
Yeah.
But I don't let that stop me. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you do have to feel comfortable. Yeah. And yeah, but once I feel comfortable, then I feel like that's when the chemistry comes out because I just get too nervous for all that beforehand.
Yeah. For me, I'm very much someone who picks up on, like, the vibes and the energy of someone, like, interacting with them, so it's easier for me to, like, get a sense if there's someone that, like, I vibe with. Someone that I, like, connect with and, like, things flow really well or not, because, I don't know, it's, like, an energetic thing for me. It's kind of hard to, like, put into words. It's more, like, an intuitive feeling, I guess, that I get.
I do have that, I would say. In the sense of, like, what makes me initially attracted to someone. Yeah. It's kind of like an intuition thing. You kind of get a sense of their character. Yeah. And so, like, I don't know, if someone seems like just, like, a really good person and sort of carries themselves in a certain way, I don't know, it's, you can definitely see that potential.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if, like, it's a little awkward at first, at least in my experience.
Yeah, definitely.
I hear some noises. What are you doing?
Oh, you hear noises? Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm fidgeting with my AirPods.
Yeah, I could hear it.
Oh, no. I hope. So, kind of the idea of, like, introvert versus extrovert. What would you consider yourself to be, Audrey? Because I feel like I'm definitely an introvert.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've always kind of thought of myself as an introvert.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of was initially how we got along in a way, is like we were both kind of a little anxious.
Yeah.
We were, both just kind of like,
we're both like, off to the side. Like there was like,
we both
group,
just like
and
sat in the back.
To the side, like didn't want to be like the center of attention, and that's kind of what like brought us to like bond.
Yeah, we just happened to sit next to each other, and then
didn't want
it just stuck.
But yeah.
This is just like a hypothesis. I'm not doing any psychology research or anything, but I feel like the idea that we're like people are inherently just like an extrovert or an introvert, I don't know, I feel like it's limiting.
Yeah.
Because I realize that a lot of the people I know that consider themselves introverts are very anxious, It comes from a place of anxiety. It comes from a place of worried about how you're being perceived, and because there's this kind of idea that extroverts just love talking to people and want more human connection. Maybe introverts don't as much. I think we all need human connection.
Yes, I agree.
And just kind of sometimes when maybe you're anxious, you feel really perceived, or maybe you're insecure, it's more exhausting to go out in the world and like meet new people.
Yeah.
Not because of the social interaction, but because of these other factors that, you know, you have mentally. And yeah, I just don't think you're like born an extrovert or born an introvert. And the same thing can be said for extroverts. I have a friend where she's anxious in the way that she kind of just feels the need to fill space with words and, you know, kind of gets uncomfortable when there's like silence. And that's part of the reason why she's an extrovert, is just because she just takes control of the conversation. And yeah, so I think it's just like an accumulation of our lived experiences and whatever we've got going on in our heads.
Yeah,
that
for sure.
But I think everyone needs connection. Like everyone needs human connection. And it can definitely change. Like I find myself becoming a little bit more extroverted, like in quotes, because I didn't, you know, I don't think it's a good idea to limit yourself, to get so attached to the idea of yourself being one way or another. I think we're fluid, and we should allow ourselves to adapt and change. I used to get so nervous speaking with strangers, and now I don't anymore. So, you know, there's nothing about me that changed at all, except for I'm less anxious.
Right. I think it also just takes like pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Those first few times that like you are meeting new people, because I definitely used to be on the more nervous end, and I just would get anxious like approaching people and like introducing myself to people. I still have that to some extent, definitely.
Me too, yeah.
I'm much better at like doing like I'm better at pushing myself out of my comfort zone when it comes to socializing. And I guess another thing I wanted to add is I think part of it also, the way that I view it, is like not necessarily how you interact with people or like whether or not you're talkative or not, but the way I kind of view it is like how do you like recharge, and like how do you like what do you gain energy from doing. And for me, that's usually I gain energy from like spending time by myself and like doing activities by myself. But I feel like that can also just be very dependent on like the crowd you're with.
Yeah.
The reason I've usually leaned more introverted is because I feel like my recharge time and like the ways that I reset my energy has always been like spending time and doing something alone. And then I'd go and like then I could bring my best like most social self to social settings and like actually be like outgoing and not like shy, because I would have the energy to do that, if that makes sense. And I feel like there's some people that just like don't need to like recharge like that, and they can just like automatically have that energy, or they even like get more energy from being around people and like talking to people.
Yeah, I definitely do also feel that way about needing to just be alone and recharge.
Yeah.
But as you said, it really just depends on the people.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think everyone, and specifically me, is so impacted by sort of the people around you, and it really is impactful. But there's such a difference when you're maybe around people that you don't trust, or when you're around people you don't know, and it's definitely much more exhausting to be around. For example, I'm living with roommates, and they're all amazing, and I don't feel like my social battery sort of applies to them. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I can recharge while being social with them.
For sure. Yeah.
So I think that type of connection can be a recharge.
Definitely. Yeah.
If you're surrounded by people that you know, respect and trust and care about, and they're good people. And I think the key thing is I guess I'm sort of changing the subject. Well,
that's okay.
I am and I'm not, but to friendship, where it needs to be like a mutual thing. Like I feel like there's, you know, a lot of the reasons why certain friendships, close friendships, go downhill is maybe one person is putting a lot of energy into the friendship and the other person isn't reciprocating. Or it's so rewarding when you have a friendship that's like you do that for them, they do it for you.
Right.
Very just mutual. But yeah, I mean, I think with any type of relationship, you need to have that like balance.
For sure.
And it's just, it never ends well when one person is putting in more and the other one isn't, or maybe you don't have boundaries, or maybe, you know.
Right. I was always such a giver, and I would give, and like put so much energy into like friendships and relationships that like really did not value me the same amount in return. Yeah, but I think as I've grown, I've gotten better at just kind of like taking a step back, like just letting things like play out, and like putting energy and like reciprocating energy of people who taking note and observing like who's actually reciprocating my energy, who's actually reciprocating my effort, and like
100%,
on those relationships rather than just like constantly feeling like I'm the one seeking out.
Yes.
The conversation.
And I feel like this ties into what we were talking about, being like sort of self-identifying ourselves as introverts.
Yes.
I've also always thought of my like self as someone who, it was difficult for me to make friends, and I sort of was always in this mindset that I didn't have very many friends and I wasn't good at making friends. So I kind of was just taking whatever I could get.
Yeah.
But in a way, I wasn't like, with that mindset, I wasn't giving myself any of the sort of, I don't know if power is the right word, but any sort of like autonomy in like in a relationship, in a friendship. You kind of put yourself in a less powerful position so that they kind of have this power over you, where you're kind of just, it's a little bit, I don't know if self-absorbed is the right way, but it's like you're a little bit too self-aware, and it's always like,
yeah, I know what
you're going into your friendships with like, oh, how do they perceive me?
Right.
How me, and not, oh, do I actually like this person? Do I actually want, you know, and I think a lot of people have this issue where they're so, you know, and I'm certainly insecure too, but it's like they're so worried about their own perception of themselves, where they neglect to think about their actions, how what they're, you know, doing in the world, and what they want, and and that sort of thing. And it took me a while, but now I'm realizing that it's not worth it to have those friendships where, you know, they're not putting in the energy. And it's good to ask yourself, like, what do you actually want to be surrounded with?
Right.
Did it pick up on the burp?
No, I didn't get that.
Oh, wonderful.
Definitely think it comes from like this fear of like being perceived.
Yes.
It's funny because you just asked if it picked up on your burp. So I could sense a little fear there of them perceiving you as someone who burps. Even though
we all burp. What a great revelation there. We all burp.
Yeah, like you were saying, I think it really just comes down to changing your mindset, because I definitely in a similar way where I was like, I'm not good at being friends, like, or I'm not good at making friends, I'm not good at talking to people, like I'm awkward, and I had this like narrative about myself. I was like,
yes, me too,
person, and I just like don't know how to talk to people. And that was when I had those like one-sided friendships where it was like, okay, these people don't actually value my friendship, and I'm just kind of there.
Yeah, and you're putting yourself, by having that mindset and like having those friendships, you're kind of putting yourself in this inferior position to them and giving them such power over you, like their word dictates who you are, which is not the case. And yeah, I think more people need to sort of, this might sound mean. I don't know if it's mean.
It's okay.
But I think people need to take responsibility for how they go out into the world, and need to take responsibility for their own mental health.
Definitely.
And yes, I know that obviously some people, you're dealing with some crazy stuff, and that's different, but you know, as someone who's been in that mindset where you feel a certain way about yourself, and you think whatever anyone says and does is just a reflection on you, and it doesn't come from yourself. I wish that I would have taken sort of responsibility for my own thoughts sooner, because we do, in a way, like, you can change things
for sure
about yourself, about the way you think, about how you move through the world.
For sure.
But it's not going to happen if you don't want it to, exactly. And if you're not willing to put in the work.
Right.
Yeah.
Take work to build that, like, confidence, I guess, in yourself, to like get out of that, like, victim mentality of
yes.
no one likes me. Like,
mm-hmm.
Like, getting out of that victim mentality is so huge, because I am a firm believer that, like, you attract what you believe about yourself, and if you believe you're, like, this socially awkward, like, person that, like, no one wants to be friends with, then that's what you're going to attract, and you're going to attract like, ingenuine friends. Speaking from personal experience. But I think there's definitely, like, a balance, though, and we're all human, and, like, we all have our awkward moments, like, obviously.
And even once you put in the work, it's still not, like, an everyday 100% of the time thing. Like, we all have those moments where we just feel so insecure and so perceived and so uncomfortable in our own skin, but, you know, it really is worth the effort.
For sure.
But I like that you brought up, like, the victim mentality, because that's something I feel it's such a difficult thing, because a lot of these people with the victim mentality, they were victims.
They were, right.
And so it starts from this place of, oh, someone, like, is genuinely has hurt you. Someone, you know, awful things genuinely have happened to you. Right. And so it's hard to tell someone to, like, get out of their victim mentality, because, you know, they have gone through this stuff, and it is real.
Right.
And it's just kind of that fear.
Yeah.
And so then they go through their lives now thinking that everything is against them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because things have been against them in the past. Like, it's logical, it makes sense, but you will not, you know, you won't be happy that way. Like, assuming everyone's gonna hurt you, because then what happens is you start acting like people are gonna hurt you before they do, and then you end up hurting other people.
It's like living in, like, defense mode.
Yeah, and when you're defensive, you lash out. Right. And you know, I've certainly been that person before, too, like, and it's not a good place to be.
Yeah, I really like how you acknowledge that the people who do live in a victim mentality, like, they live in that mentality because they've had negative experiences.
Yeah, it's a protective thing.
They've had the experiences that shaped them to think that way. Like, all negative experiences have a huge impact on just, like, our habitual thinking pattern.
100%, yeah.
And so, yeah, I love that you acknowledge that, because I think a lot of people who have never been in their position might not fully understand what it takes to get out of that mindset. It does take a lot of hard work, and it does take self-compassion, and it does take, you know, just being patient with yourself. So I think, like, obviously you're responsible for getting yourself out of that mentality, but also doing it in a compassionate way towards yourself is so important.
And it's, you know, it's really difficult. Like, you know, I know some people that are so deep into that victim, you know, mentality, but they're not giving them, like, they're not caring for themselves. They have no self-compassion at all.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see, like, it becomes clear how they're talking to themselves internally by how they start treating people outside of them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah. Because, you know, they're thinking, oh, this person's judging me, this person hates me. And, you know, from an outside perspective, like, they kind of sound like they're really delusional.
Right. Because obviously no one's thinking that much about it.
Yeah. But it comes from this, like, really hurt place. Yeah. And that's kind of how they talk to themselves and see themselves. Right. And it's so difficult to,
I agree.
The moral of that story is, get help, you know, if you have access to therapy. Right. Take advantage, please.
We just have opinions.
Yeah, exactly.
On our experiences, but
in my opinion, is that getting therapy is if you have the resources and the access to that. Obviously, not all therapists are created equal. Like, I know some people might have had bad experiences with a therapist, but there are more therapists.
If you guys need a therapist in like 5-ish years, hit me up.
Ooh, there you go. There you go. You're getting clients early.
But I'm not
planting those seeds.
I'm not licensed yet. I'm gonna take a few guys.
Yeah. We'll give it a few years.
Come back in a few years, but yeah. Well,
I used to want to be a therapist.
Did you really?
Yeah, but no longer. Because, well, I don't know, like 14, 15-year-old me.
Gotcha, okay.
Wanted to be a therapist. Yeah. And I made the mistake of like, because I wanted to help people, which is like a good thing.
Yeah.
But then like, I had this idea that like, you know, I could help people, and that was at 15. Don't try to help people at 15 when you don't know what you're doing.
What do you mean? What'd you try to do at 15?
Like, I would make friends with, like, the most mentally ill people at my school, and then, like, try to hear out their trauma and, like, try to help them. It was not... Don't do that. Like, but then I would get so, like, emotionally attached to, like, the outcome of their thing, and it's like, girl... Like, you're 15.
It's like, so huge to have, like, that boundary, and that's something...
Yes!
I'm, like...
Boundaries are so important.
Yeah, that's something that, like, I'm keeping in mind on my journey to become a therapist. Like, I need to learn to have that, like, emotional boundary from, like, the situation of my clients.
100%.
At the end
it's because it's so difficult.
There to, like, support them and, like, guide them with their
responsibility
in their life, and... So
exactly
that like hyper responsibility aspect off of it.
Exactly. Like, I think that was like my issue when I was younger, and I still have little tiny thoughts like this that, you know, to this day. But it's like, I thought that I wasn't good enough if I couldn't help them. Like, if I couldn't. So it's like suddenly their actions became a reflection of me in like how good of a friend I was. So and it's like, no,
that can be really
like, it's separate. Like, that's such a dangerous mindset to have.
For sure. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I was having a conversation with someone recently, and I could tell that they definitely, as someone who has anxiety and is more anxious, I could tell they were definitely looking at me from a lens of like, oh, this girl is like below me, like she's anxious, like she has like these mental health struggles, kind of looking at me from like, this person was kind of like, I could tell they were just minimizing me and viewing me in that light, and they were kind of saying to me, do you really think like someone like you with like high anxiety has like the capability to help people and like make sure you're...
That's a crazy thing to say. That's wild. Oh my god. No, I was just gonna say, like, I feel like some of the best therapists are the ones that understand what you're going through.
100%. Like, but yeah, it was, at first they were just like, you know, the thing you mentioned, like, some people want to be therapists because they want to help themselves through helping other people. And that kind of reminded me of the thing you were mentioning, like, how you put so much responsibility on, like, these other people's problems. And I was like, that's a valid point. Like, that's definitely something that I've, like, thought about. And yeah, I definitely know there's, like, a boundary, something important to take care of. And then that's when they continued on and said, well, you have anxiety. Think about, like, if you really could do this. But
someone actually said that to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are not better or worse than anyone because of, you know, whatever mental health thingies.
100%.
My opinion is that all you are your actions and how you treat others.
That's so true.
So it's like, you know, it doesn't matter what, you know, what's going through your head. It matters what you put out into the world. It matters how you treat, you know, like, randoms.
Exactly. That's
like,
so huge.
You know, that's just my mindset, and like...
Yeah, I think that having that superiority complex...
That's so dangerous, and...
Is like, that's like the opposite of like putting good out into the world, because you're automatically viewing yourself as someone more valuable because of...
Yeah, and you're... It kind of like negates the point.
Yeah,
like, cancels out. You know, thinking of yourself as so drastically above or below anyone is just not a place you should want to be ever. Like,
it's honestly just unattractive.
Yeah. Like we're all, we're all human, and we all have days where we're feeling more confident,
right.
we're feeling less confident, and we might feel, and it's all fluid. Like,
yeah.
I certainly have days where it's like, wow, am I just a better person than others? And then I have some days where I'm just like, all these people, right, are doing all this shit ahead of me, so it's like some days you feel like you're ahead, some days you feel like you're behind, but that's just not the way you should think about people and humans. And I have a new topic. I feel like as a society, we've gotten too individualistic.
I agree. Wait, I so agree with
you. And there's this like departure from community.
Yes.
And I think community, and I think maybe just like Western society, we were raised in a way where it's like everyone for themselves,
like
and
culture.
Yeah, hustle culture. Mm-hmm. It's so, and sort of just like trying to get ahead, trying to, even like, I feel like growing up in schools, it's like, oh, what class are you in? Oh, you skipped a grade. Oh, you this, that. It's like you're measured in comparison to the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the idea of community isn't, I feel like
it's not like to compete. It's to unite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that I just like am such a happier and better person right now, where I feel like I'm living with a few people where we all want to uplift each other.
That's such a beautiful thing.
We all want to care for each other.
Yeah.
And everyone's pitching in. Everyone has good days, everyone has bad days, and like it feels like a little bit more like a community.
Yeah.
And I feel like there are too many people out here who are just like comparing themselves to everyone they're around.
Yeah.
And, that's not good for anyone or yourself. Like, that's just, and I feel like social media perpetuates this in a way.
Yeah.
Where you're like comparing yourself to other people on social media.
Yeah.
Which is just obviously awful, right? You don't,
especially because half of the things you don't see the behind the scenes of it.
Yeah. And it kind of sneaks up on you. Like, I've had this belief that I shouldn't compare myself to others on social media my whole life.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I do or don't. Sometimes I'm like, no, why would I ever compare myself?
Yeah.
And then other times, like, I catch myself doing it, even though I don't believe in it. You know what I mean? Like, just because you're against something doesn't mean you're susceptible to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so harmful.
Yeah. No, definitely. I would agree with that. That's like one thing that I really liked about Spain when we were there. I feel like the culture
can't relate.
Well, not necessarily like my
you finish your thing.
Something that I admired about the Spanish culture is that it's very collectivist, and I think they prioritize more so like spending time with their friends and spending time with their family. Like, that is their main priority. I don't think they live as much for the hustle. It's more like, my roommate said this the other day, because she has European roots, and what did she say? You don't live to work, you work to live.
Yeah.
That's like the European, or like a lot of other countries besides the United States, like the way they do.
Yeah. I definitely do have that mindset.
Yes.
Now, I agree with you about the culture. Mm-hmm. I'll say specifically in Sevilla, because that's where we spent 5 months. But I also don't come for me, Spain, not you. While they do have this culture, it's in a way an exclusive culture.
Okay.
Because it's very homogenous.
Yeah.
Ethnically, culturally, socially.
Yeah.
And it's very clear they're also kind of racist. And like, if you go there, you have to fit into this culture. You have to adhere to this culture.
Yes.
And I critique the United States on the daily, But I think one thing we do have in some places is a really nice ability for many different cultures to live together.
Yes.
Like just New York, for example. You have people from all around the world in New York.
Yes.
Living together. And I think that's amazing.
I
like
agree,
that's
yeah.
like the food is amazing, the like, and you can be friends with anyone.
Yeah.
And you don't have to adhere to certain cultural norms.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I just really love that.
I love a place that has that variety and has that freedom to not have to adhere to a specific norm. I think that's just like such a freeing way to live, and such
100%.
such an expansive way to live, because you can always learn from like the people around you and always meet different types of people.
Yeah. I like variety, like I really do.
I agree.
And I can appreciate the community that certain places get out of a really specific culture. Like there is this strong community. But I think where this becomes not great is when you think of your culture as above another.
Yes.
Or better, I think just this idea of like your belief makes you superior, your culture makes you superior. Yeah. Something about, I think we need a humanity, like a human community. Like,
yes. Like humanity is being lost, is being slowly.
I don't see it. Like, where is it?
And it makes me so sad.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I just wish that, around the world, there could be this idea of like helping others and wanting the best for others. But we have this sort of, in the United States specifically and in the whole world, just on a larger scale of trying to get ahead.
Yeah.
Even with countries over another, like everyone's trying to get ahead. Everyone's trying to get more money, more power. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, wait, we need to stop or else I'm going to go on a political rant. You don't want me to go on a political rant.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on and for bringing
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And for bringing so many interesting conversation topics to the table. I think we had a lot of interesting things to talk about. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Okay, bye.